In this video, I'm going to cover a topic that has been very highly requested by most of you. It's a topic on fractions, decimals, and percentages. So we're going to focus on one part in this video, that is fractions to percentages. So let's get started right away. Before we go into this topic, I want us to start with very simple questions to see how good we are in terms of our multiplication. So let's multiply numbers as simple as 2 times 10. What is 2 times 10? It's like writing that number and then just adding a 0. So that is 20. How about 3 times 10? Write that number and then multiply by or add the 0. So of course, if you're not really sure, you can arrange it in column form, 10 and a 3, and then multiply. So 3 times 0 is 0 and 3 times 1 is 3. So that's how you get your answer. How about if we have 3 times 100? So we have added 2 zeros, so we'll write a 3 and 2 zeros. How does that come about? So I start with the big number, 100 multiplied by the 3. Once again, you multiply the number below by each of the numbers above. So 3 times 0 gives you 0. 3 times 0 gives you a 0. And then 3 times 1 gives you 3. And that's how we get our 300. How about if it was something like division? Okay, so if we have 2 divided by 10, how will that be? So 2 divided by 10 can be written as 2 over 10. Now, whenever you have a 1 and a 0 in your denominator, it's going to change to a decimal, so you'll start as 0.2. So this 0 gives you 1 decimal place. What if we had 2 divided by 100? So remember, these are 2 zeros, so we're going to have how many decimal places? 2 of them. So rewriting this question, it's 2 over 100, and that gives us 0.02. So you have to consider the number in the numerator. If it is just 1 and you need 2 zeros, not 2 zeros, 2 decimal places, you'll have to add a 0, so that after the decimal point we have 1, 2 decimal places. All right, so with that in mind, then I think it's okay for us to now be able to look at some questions on changing fractions to decimals. All right, so I'll start with this kind of a question. One of the most common fractions that we have is half. So how do we change half to a percentage? What we are going to do in every time that we are changing fractions to percentages is we multiply it by 100%. So whenever you're thinking about percentage, the total percentage, the whole percentage is normally 100%. So you want to find the fraction of that whole percentage. Yeah, so there are two ways to do this. The first way is to just multiply these numbers. So 100 can be written as a fraction, so it's the same as 100 over 1. So in that case, 1 times 100 will give us 100, and then 2 times 1 will be given as 2. Now, 100 over 2 is the same as 100 divided by 2. So you might want to divide using the long way. So if I divide 100 divided by 2, so I'm going to draw my division sign right there. So the numerator will go in. Numerator and in, they have a number in common, a letter in common, the n. So the numerator will also always go in. So I'm going to write 100, and then the denominator will obviously go out. Now you want to ask yourself, in the 2 times table, How many times does 2 go into 1? Now, there's no number in the 2 times table that you can find that is less than 1. So instead, we take 2 numbers. So when you start with one number and it's not in the 2 times table, go ahead and consider 2 numbers, okay? In the 2 times table, is there a number that you can multiply together with 2 to get a 10? So if you have your 2 times table all mastered, you will realize that if we multiply 2 times 5, it gives us a 10. So at this point, we subtract. So 0 take away 0 is 0. 1 take away 1 is 0. Now, remember there's a decimal, not a decimal, a 0 that is at the top. So I'm gonna pull it down. It should come here. So what will happen is I'm gonna write that 0 right here and then ask myself once again in the 2 times table, 2 goes into 0 how many times? 0 times. So I'll put a 0 right here and then down here because 2 times 0 is 0. Alright, so I'm gonna subtract 0, take away 0 is 0. Alright, so I have solved that question. So 100 divided by 2 will give you 50. Now remember we were finding a percentage, so we have to write that at the end, 50%. Now another way to think about it is to simplify. So if we had 100 divided by 2. If your mental math is so clear, then you can cancel this out. By 2, 1, by 2. Have I cancelled them properly? That should be by 2 gives you 50. So our answer will still be a 50, but it's a percentage, so you have to indicate 50%. So those are 2 ways you can be able to solve that fraction to a percentage. So let's look at another question. So this is question 1. Now in question 2 we have a quarter. So how do we change a quarter to a percentage? So I have said we always multiply by 100 every time we want to change a fraction to a percentage. So let's try the first way, which is just multiplying them as fractions. So I'll assume that 100 is just 100 over 1. 1 times 100 gives you 100. 4 times 1 gives you 4. So here we have 100 divided by 4. So of course I'll start with the first way, which is dividing it. Remember we have said the numerator does what? It goes in. Always remember that. So I'll put 100 inside and I'll put the 4 outside. Now I'm gonna consider the 4 times table. So the denominator is the one that tells you which times table you're gonna consider. Alright, so I look at the numbers that I have. 4 goes into 1 how many times? There's no number that's less than 1 in the 4 times table. So I move on to 2 numbers. So let me just put a comma here so that it doesn't look like a decimal. Yeah, so 4 times what gives you a number close to 10 or less than 10? So we know that 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. So there's no 10 in this times table, so we are going to go for the number that is closest to 10 but is smaller than 10, and in this case it's 8. So with that in mind, then I'm gonna say that 4 times 2 will give me an 8, and then I'll subtract. So when I subtract that, what is 10 take away 8? It gives me a 2. So I'll do the next thing, which is to drop down the 0 because if you look at 4, 4 doesn't go into 2. There's no number that is less than 2 in the 4 times table. So I'm gonna drop this 0. Now 4 goes into 20 how many times? So we had gotten to 12, so I'll continue. 4 times 3 gives you what? Gives you, oh, we had already solved times 3, so I should be going times 4. Gives you, so in the times table it's like adding the number in every step. So if we're in the 4 times table, you have to add a 4 in each step to get the next number. Yeah, so 12 plus 4 gives you 16. All right, 4 times 5 gives you what in this times table? 20. All right, so it's the 5 that gives us a 20. So 4 times 5, we put a 5 on top, gives you a 20. We put it down below. So when we subtract these two numbers, there's nothing that is remaining. So we are done with that. So our answer in this case will be 25. But remember, we were expressing it as a percentage. So 25%. All right. So let me look at another example. Example 3. So by now, I hope you are already mastering how to change these fractions to percentages. What if we had a number like 1 over 5? So pause this video, try solving 1 over 5 to a percentage, and then get to check it out after you have done your solution. All right, so in this case, we multiply it by 100 once again. So this is a percentage. So this will be the same as over 1. 1 times 100 is 100. 5 times 1 is 5. So of course you have to do the long division, and when you do the long division, that is, let's say, so I need to wrap this part so that I get space. Yeah. All right, so that will be 100 goes in and the 5 goes out. So we are thinking of the 5 times table. So we look at 5 goes into 1 how many times? Does 5 go into 1? No, the 1 is less than 5, so we go with 2 numbers. 5 goes into 10 how many times? So let's look at the 5 times table. 5 times 1 gives you what? 5. 5 times 2 gives you 10. So already we have the number right here. So I'm gonna write 2 on top. So 5 times 2 gives you 10. So when you subtract, that number should be nothing there, nothing. It's like a 0. So the next step is to drop down the 0. And then you ask yourself, 5 goes into 0 how many times? 0 times. So 5 times 0 is 0. And when you subtract, once again, there's no remainder right there. So our answer in this question will be written as 20. But remember, it was a percentage, so 20%. All right, so let me give you guys the last question in this topic so that we can be able to confirm whether indeed you guys have understood it. So try solving this on your own. So this is number 4. I'm writing it with a different color so that you solve it first. So what if we have a number like 2 over 5? All right, so what we do is we multiply it by 100. So the steps are exactly the same. So once you have it as that, I want to use the second method, which was simplifying. So you have to think about how many times 5 goes into 100? So by now already we know this. This requires you to know your multiplication table really, really well. So we know that 5 goes into 100 20 times. So we can cancel that out. By 5, 1, by 5, 20. So we are remaining with a 2 and a 20. So we are going to multiply them out. So 2 times 20, and then over what is in the numerator, 1 times 1, which is just written as 1 times 1. So 2 times 20 is 40. 1 times 1 is just 1. So when you simplify that, you will get your answer as 40%. I hope you enjoyed this video.